Formula One isn't secretly preparing for life after Max Verstappen. It's already doing it. While everyone obsessed over rumours linking Verstappen to McLaren, Red Bull quietly shifted its attention elsewhere. And the name isn't Oscar Piastri. It's Oliver Bearman. The shocking part isn't the rumour itself. It's the political trail leading back to Ferrari, where years of academy planning could collapse because one veteran simply refused to fade away. For months, the paddock treated the Verstappen to McLaren rumours like a simple driver swap. Max leaves Red Bull, Oscar Piastri heads the opposite direction, and Formula One carries on. Elegant, predictable, almost too convenient. But Formula One rarely rewards simple stories. Behind closed motorhome doors, executives aren't planning a straight exchange. They're calculating survival. Verstappen's reported discussions with McLaren, combined with Red Bull's shrinking competitive advantage under the current development cycle, have forced Milton Keynes to explore entirely different contingency plans. Suddenly, one young Ferrari protégé has become the most valuable chess piece on the board. But there's a catch. What the teams aren't telling us is that Ferrari's biggest threat isn't losing a race. It's losing patience inside its own academy. Lewis Hamilton's resurgence, backed by his reported 2027 contract commitment, has quietly blocked the development path Ferrari designed years ago for Oliver Bearman. And Red Bull know it. Laurent Mekies knows Bearman better than almost anyone after bringing him into Ferrari's academy, making this far more than a transfer rumour. What if Verstappen's future doesn't just reshape Red Bull, but tears apart Ferrari's long-term succession plan? Before we move on, make sure to smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss out on any of our latest videos. Because what we're about to uncover isn't just another driver market rumour. It reveals the hidden political chain reaction that could completely rewrite Formula One's power structure for 2027. Let's start with the biggest misconception surrounding this entire story. Most fans believe Red Bull's succession plan begins only when Max Verstappen decides to leave. That's not how championship-winning organisations operate. Elite teams don't wait for disasters. They model them years in advance. Every contract clause, every academy graduate, and every rival's weakness is continuously evaluated. In other words, Red Bull aren't reacting to Verstappen's uncertainty. They're stress-testing a future without him. That distinction matters, because Verstappen isn't just another driver occupying a seat. He's the centerpiece around which Red Bull have built their entire technical philosophy. Recent cars have increasingly favoured an aggressive front-end balance, demanding extraordinary confidence on corner entry. It's a setup many experienced drivers have struggled to exploit consistently. Sergio Perez found it difficult. Liam Lawson has faced similar challenges. Even talented newcomers have discovered that driving a Red Bull quickly is a completely different challenge from driving it safely. So replacing Verstappen isn't about finding another superstar. It's about finding someone capable of adapting to one of the most demanding technical environments on the grid. And this is exactly where Oliver Bearman suddenly becomes fascinating. Forget the headlines for a moment and look at the numbers. Bearman has scored 18 championship points for Haas this season, while his far more experienced teammate Esteban Ocon has managed only 3 in identical machinery. That isn't just a respectable rookie campaign. It's the sort of internal comparison team principals obsess over because identical cars remove countless variables. Engineers love comparative data because it isolates driver performance far more effectively than headline finishing positions. Now compare that with what Red Bull actually need. They don't necessarily require someone capable of matching Verstappen immediately. Nobody realistically can. They need someone whose learning curve is exceptionally steep, whose technical feedback accelerates development, and whose ceiling appears much higher than today's results suggest. Bearman ticks every one of those boxes. Look back to Saudi Arabia 2024. thrown into a Ferrari at virtually no notice. After Carlos Sainz was ruled out, Bearman wasn't expected to fight near the front. The pressure alone should have overwhelmed a teenager making his Formula One debut. Instead, he looked remarkably composed over an entire Grand Prix weekend, managed tyre degradation intelligently, avoided costly mistakes, and calmly delivered points for Ferrari under circumstances that would have exposed many experienced drivers. That performance changed something inside the paddock, not because he finished in the points. Because rival teams suddenly saw evidence that Bearman processes information unusually quickly under pressure, a characteristic that cannot simply be taught through simulator sessions or engineering meetings. Now, let's turn the camera towards Ferrari, because this is where the political drama becomes genuinely uncomfortable. For years, Ferrari believed they had solved one of Formula One's hardest problems: succession planning. They recruited Bearman into the Ferrari Driver Academy at just 16 years old. They invested in his junior career, managed his development program, secured a strategic partnership with Haas to provide Formula One mileage without exposing him to the relentless pressure of Maranello, and quietly mapped out what appeared to be the perfect timeline: gain experience, eliminate rookie mistakes, then graduate into the Scuderia when the opportunity naturally arrived. It was a beautifully engineered conveyor belt, until Lewis Hamilton rewrote the script. When Hamilton signed for Ferrari, many insiders assumed his role would be relatively short-term: win races, help rebuild Ferrari into title contenders, mentor the next generation, then gradually step aside. Instead, something entirely different happened. After an inconsistent adaptation period, Hamilton rediscovered the rhythm that made him a 7-time world champion. Better qualifying execution, cleaner tyre management over long stints, stronger race pace, multiple podiums. More importantly, he climbed ahead of Charles Leclerc in the championship standings. That's not just impressive, it's politically explosive, because Ferrari suddenly face a problem most teams would love to have, but one that creates enormous pressure behind closed doors. Neither Hamilton nor Leclerc currently gives Ferrari a logical reason to make a driver change. Hamilton reportedly activating a clause to remain on the 2027 grid only tightens the bottleneck. Every additional season he occupies that seat delays Bearman's promotion, regardless of how impressive the young Brit becomes. And patience has limits. Especially in modern Formula One, young drivers no longer wait indefinitely because the competitive window closes quickly. Every season spent in midfield is one fewer season fighting for championships. Careers aren't measured only by talent anymore, they're measured by timing. Red Bull understand that better than anyone. Notice something else. Laurent Mekies isn't evaluating Bearman from a spreadsheet. He already knows exactly how the driver thinks. During his time at Ferrari, Mekies played a key role in Bearman's early development within the academy. He understands his communication style, his simulator work, his technical feedback, and, perhaps most importantly, how quickly he absorbs engineering information during race weekends. That's priceless knowledge. Most rival teams scout from the outside. Mekies has already seen the operating system running underneath, which transforms Bearman from an educated gamble into a calculated investment. And that's why this rumour deserves far more attention than many fans initially gave it. Because Red Bull wouldn't simply be signing another promising rookie. They would be exploiting years of Ferrari's own development program without paying the cost of creating it themselves. Now compare Red Bull's thinking with McLaren's, because this is where the entire driver market starts resembling a political domino chain rather than a collection of isolated negotiations. Publicly, McLaren continue to insist they are fully committed to Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Mark Webber has dismissed suggestions that Piastri is looking elsewhere as nonsense, while Zak Brown repeatedly reinforces his confidence in his current lineup. But Formula One contracts are only as stable as the performance that surrounds them. If Verstappen's camp were to present McLaren with a genuine opportunity for 2027, Brown would face the biggest leadership decision of his tenure: reject a four-time world champion out of loyalty, or disrupt the strongest driver pairing on the grid to secure perhaps the fastest driver of his generation. That's not a sporting decision, that's a boardroom war. And Red Bull know it. Every conversation between Verstappen and McLaren increases uncertainty across the grid, even if no agreement is ultimately reached. The mere possibility forces rival teams to review contingency plans, contract clauses, and academy priorities months, sometimes years, ahead of schedule. Look carefully at the visual evidence we've already seen. Notice Verstappen's increasingly restrained body language after difficult weekends. The frustration isn't theatrical anymore. The radio messages are shorter. The post-race interviews are more measured. Instead of emotional outbursts, there is calculated ambiguity whenever questions about his future arise. That's often more revealing. Drivers who intend to stay usually shut speculation down immediately. Drivers keeping options open rarely do. Then look at Red Bull. Rather than publicly dismissing succession discussions, senior figures continue speaking about the future in remarkably cautious language. That doesn't confirm Verstappen is leaving, but it confirms they consider the possibility credible enough to prepare for. Preparation is everything. Now add another technical layer. The 2027 competitive landscape remains uncertain because teams are still adapting to major regulatory evolution, power unit development, and budget cap priorities. Investing £50 million plus annually in one superstar becomes a far more complicated calculation when no organisation can guarantee outright dominance. A younger driver like Bearman represents something entirely different. Lower financial commitment, longer development runway, greater flexibility, and potentially a driver who grows alongside the next generation of Red Bull machinery rather than trying to adapt after years of established habits. It's a classic Formula One calculation. Do you spend enormous resources preserving proven excellence, or invest early in creating the next one? That's exactly the dilemma confronting Laurent Mekies. Because if Verstappen eventually walks away, replacing his outright speed is almost impossible. Replacing the long-term stability of the team may prove far more important. And this brings us to the biggest twist of all. This story was never really about Max Verstappen. He's simply the first domino. The real battle is over. Who controls Formula One's next generation of elite talent? Ferrari have already invested years building Oliver Bearman into their future. Every junior championship, every simulator program, every test session, and every carefully planned season at Haas formed part of a long-term blueprint. Losing him wouldn't simply mean losing a promising driver. It would mean financing Red Bull's future. Think about the irony. Ferrari would spend years identifying, nurturing, and developing one of Britain's brightest prospects, only for Red Bull to offer him the one thing Maranello currently cannot: a clear and immediate path to a race-winning seat. That's a devastating political defeat. History has shown that Formula One's greatest mistakes aren't always technical. Sometimes they're human. Red Bull lost Sebastian Vettel to Ferrari. Mercedes watched George Russell spend years waiting before finally earning his promotion. McLaren once let Oscar Piastri slip through Alpine's fingers because contractual certainty wasn't matched by strategic clarity. The lesson is brutally simple. If talented drivers begin questioning whether their future truly exists inside your organisation, somebody else will answer that question for them. Ferrari, therefore, face a decision that extends well beyond Bearman himself. Do they publicly reassure him? Do they guarantee a long-term pathway? Or do they continue asking for patience while Hamilton and Leclerc remain firmly established? Because patience sounds noble. until another team arrives with a contract. And don't overlook one final visual clue. When Laurent Mekies speaks about young talent, he consistently emphasizes adaptability, intelligence, and technical feedback, rather than outright speed. That's not accidental wording. Those are precisely the qualities Bearman has demonstrated throughout his rise to Formula One. Whether that eventually leads to a Red Bull contract remains uncertain. But the scouting profile already fits, which means Ferrari cannot afford complacency. If Verstappen ultimately stays, this entire succession plan may remain hidden behind closed doors. If he leaves, however, Bearman instantly becomes one of the most valuable drivers in the entire market. Not because he has won races already, but because multiple top teams could suddenly see him as the foundation of their next championship cycle. And that's why this rumour refuses to disappear. Because beneath the sensational headlines lies a much bigger reality. Formula One isn't waiting for Verstappen to make his decision. The teams are already preparing for the world that comes after it. So here's the question nobody inside the paddock wants to answer. If Red Bull really come calling, will Oliver Bearman stay loyal to Ferrari's promise, or choose the fastest route to the front of the grid? And if Verstappen makes the first move, could one signature completely rewrite Formula One's future? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories hidden behind the headlines.